In this video, we're talking about the ever controversial statement, gear
doesn't
matter. Now, before we jump into the video and before you jump into the comment section, let's get on the same page about one thing. Photography and filmmaking both tend to attract two very different types of people.
Over here, you have one group that's more art-minded, and then over here, you have another group that's more tech-minded. And then you have like a small overlap of people who are both, but in our experience, that's super rare. A good example of a person who's both passionate about the artistic side of photography just as much as the technical side of photography is Sam Hurd. His work is uniquely, wildly artful and technically sound at the same time. And then a good example of a filmmaker who strongly embodies both the art and tech side of video is our pal Daniel D'Arco. His work is both innovative creatively and technically. He's essentially a creative engineer.
But back to our main point, in general, there are two different groups of people who are attracted to photography and filmmaking. And they both look at photography and filmmaking from a different lens. Pretty good, huh?
Since both groups are so different, what both groups deem as good work varies drastically. On the artist side, people are looking for photos or films that are emotive. They want work that feels. They want work that tells a story, has symbolism, and a greater meaning.
While on the tech side, people are looking for work that is more technically exciting. Think pixel peeping. They want work that's sharper, more detailed, with perfect lighting, etc.
And they want you to hold the camera a very specific way.
You get the idea. So when we say gear doesn't matter, two things happen. On one side, the art brains hopefully feel inspired to create despite any limitations because, hey, gear doesn't matter. And then on the other side, the tech brains just won't believe us.
The problem starts at the place of determining what makes a photo or a movie good. If both sides are judging two totally different criteria, they're never going to agree on the subject of gear. Okay, full disclosure, our approach to photography is art-based. We're drawn to work that's striking and stirs up emotion. It just feels meaningful to us, so that's the work that we try to create. And even though we're biased, we don't believe that one side is more right or wrong than the other side. If we're going to talk about the question of how much gear matters, we need to first acknowledge that this subject is being approached from two very different directions, technically and artistically.
Now, we've talked about this many times before, but lately we've seen so much noise about if gear does or doesn't matter, so we felt compelled to discuss.
One of the reasons why we feel so strongly about having a conversation about this is because we don't believe that photography or filmmaking should be gatekept. If the only people who get to express themselves creatively by making photos or films are the people with the resources to do so, then we've got a real problem.
Now you may be shouting at your computer about the fact that we're not shooting this video on an entry-level DSLR, a nifty 50, or even a phone. And you're right, we're not. In fact, we're shooting this entire video on a Canon C200, a prime L lens, and a handful of nice lights. Oh, and we have these wireless lavs. Does that make us hypocrites? No, not at all. If you think that, you're missing the point entirely.
We shoot on expensive gear because this is our full-time job and it just makes our lives a whole lot easier. It's nice to not have to fuss with inconsistent lighting, the camera shutting off after like 20 minutes, missed focus, and all the other drawbacks associated with inexpensive gear. We're not saying that shooting on expensive gear isn't easier. It super is. When we take on a high-end photo shoot, we hire a big team to worry about the lighting, the hair, the makeup, and the wardrobe. We pick a location that's absolutely photogenic, and we shoot with cameras that we know like the backs of our hands and can trust to work seamlessly throughout the entire shoot. Working with a professional team doesn't make us more skilled though. It just makes our jobs easier. The more elements that we don't have to worry about, the more our brains can slip into autopilot. And then the second that we remove an element, like good lighting for example, our brains have to kick into action to problem solve. Now, if you remove the dreamy backdrop, the talented model, the hair and the makeup team, and the high-end camera, our brains really have to adapt to the situation to pull off the photos or videos that we want to create. It's harder work, a lot harder, but it can be done. And that's our point.
You can create incredibly meaningful art on an entry-level DSLR or even a phone. You don't need to go out and buy something that costs $5 grand before you can create the project that you've been dying to make. You just need to work a little extra harder to pull it off.
Okay, if you're still on the fence about the subject of gear not mattering, we think you'll agree with us on this next point. If you're a photographer or a filmmaker who enjoys watching videos on YouTube, chances are you're a fan of Casey Neistat. His approach is not from a technically perfect background. We don't think he cares about shutter speed, frame rates, nailing focus, or even drone laws. But that doesn't stop millions of people from tuning into his videos year after year. His priority is always storytelling. That's why his videos are evergreen. You can only watch a super slow-mo B-roll sequence so many times before you're left wanting something more and something new. But simple, good storytelling feels good all the time, no matter what. It's a primal instinct to want to hear and share stories. That's why we can go back and watch his bike lanes video over and over again without losing interest or even enjoyment. He's a great storyteller, and he doesn't need a high-end camera or like a cool light setup to do it. If you don't believe us, check out one of his recent pandemic videos shot on a Super 8. or the series you sold to HBO for something like a couple $1 million that was shot on something like a camcorder.
This isn't even high def. This is shooting on tape. This is the video camera your parents used to film you on for your like 3rd birthday.
Take it from the storytelling master himself, a good story is better than good gear, literally every time.
Story is all that matters. Story is golden.
We see it every year at the Moment Film Fest as well. All of the submissions are shot on smartphones and they are incredible. And every single one of them are a testament to the fact that you can make your dream project with whatever gear that you have.
We also see it on Twitter. We're often tagged in images that photographers from around the world create, and so many times they're created on entry-level DSLRs or even phones. A couple of years ago, we took notice of a particular photographer, Ipuka Mori, who would tag us in a lot of his portraits that he shot on an entry-level Canon and a Nikon. They were magazine-worthy, like total showstoppers. So much so that we asked him to be part of our 4 photographers shoot their own self-portrait challenge. He showed us exactly what he was capable of by shooting these 2 photos without a tripod or anything remotely fancy. He had a vision, hard work, and determination, and he made it happen. And a lot of people actually said that his were the best out of all of ours, and he was using the cheapest gear out of all of us. Any good photographer should be able to pull off a portrait of that caliber with minimal gear.
We think a lot of photographer and filmmaking influencers do you a disservice when they make you feel like you need to buy the latest and greatest piece of gear every single year. If now in 2021 we said you needed to have a Canon R5 or equivalent to shoot meaningful work, what will be said in 10 years from now when the R5 will seem like such an outdated piece of gear? And what about all the work that will be shot on the R5 for the next 10 years? Does it automatically become worthless when a better camera is released down the line? No, of course not.
That's why we can look at a photographer like Ansel Adams, who shot beautiful works of art with what are now considered to be ancient cameras without balking at his work, just because it wasn't shot on an R5. That entire idea is silly. So don't let anyone tell you that your art isn't up to snuff just because it wasn't shot on an R5 either.
A lot of great cameras were released in 2020. A lot. We even added one to our online shopping cart at one point and almost checked out. But we've tried to adopt a more minimalist mindset when it comes to gear, so we asked ourselves if this new camera would actually enable us to make better work. If the technological improvements were worth the cost, if we already had enough cameras that were doing the job just fine. Society tends to have this mindset where if you just buy this one next thing, you'll finally be at a place you want to get to in life. But that idea will never be true. A new camera isn't gonna make us better artists, and this particular camera wasn't gonna make our jobs that much easier, so we didn't buy it, and we haven't lost sleep over it.
So when you hear the old gear argument being kicked around on the internet, we hope you'll take it with a grain of salt.
Salt?
But most importantly, if you're somebody who can't afford high-end camera gear, we hope you'll be inspired to tell your stories and make cool art anyway.
Please do not put a hex on us in the comment section.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.